So today under the topic is punishment and effective behaviour modification strategy in children. I've selected a paper titled Anger and Selective Attention to Reward and Punishment in Children. Firstly, it's very important to cover why this particular paper is so important. To me, this particular paper is so important because it deals with a specific type of child, and that is a child that has been categorised as anger prone, and it also deals with reward as well as punishment, which I think is really important. Obviously, you've got all the different types of parenting techniques that I've listed on the slide, and this again reiterates the importance of having a balance between reward and punishment. And this paper deduces whether or not children react better to reward or punishment, which is obviously very important to the topic. Whilst going through the slides, it'd be good if you could think about whether you think punishment or reward is better in terms of modifying the behaviour of anger-prone children. So next we have the rationale, which is obviously very important. This is why this study needed to be done and why it is so important. And the rationale for this study is basically based around the fact that it is important to know how to deal with anger-prone children, and it's also important to know whether or not punishment is going to have the best result or reward is going to have the best result and give the child more motivation to modify their behaviour to act in a better way. Children who are anger prone obviously need to be dealt with in a different way, and therefore it is crucial to improve the methods of dealing with their behaviour. Also, as well, the reason why the study was so important is because reward cues are perceived to be encouraging in previous literature, and punishing cues are not, and it was critical to test whether or not these preconceptions were justified or whether it was just nonsense. And it's also very important to know whether or not the way that people generally think, it's important to know whether this needs to be changed or not. So next we have the aim, which is obviously very important. So the aim of this study was to test whether or not anger-prone children were more likely to have an attentional bias in regards to processing approach motivationally relevant stimuli, known as reward, in comparison to approach avoidance conflict stimuli, which was punishment. And although it may seem that an experiment has one focus and one aim, obviously from this we can deduce lots of different things about parenting techniques, and also the ways in which reward and punishment should be implemented to have the best effect on the child. So now we have the hypothesis. So this is the preconceived ideas and what they thought would happen in the experiment. And in this case, that was that the children would respond more quickly when given rewarding cues rather than punishment cues. And this goes back to what I said previously about people perceiving reward cues to be more encouraging, whereas punishment cues are not. So now for the participants. A total of 80 children participated in the study. That was 40 boys and 40 girls, and their age ranged across 2 grades, with the average age being 6 years old. They were all from the same preschool in mainland China, and they were evaluated for proneness to anger by their parents and teachers using the parents or teacher form of the children's behavioural questionnaire. And according to these reports, the children were screened for anger traits, so anger prone versus non-anger prone. 24 children were placed in the high anger prone group, and 32 children were placed in the low anger prone group, with parents and teachers rating them below the median levels. Okay, so now we have the method. So the method, participants were selected, as previously mentioned, through parents and teachers completing the CBQ. The children were then paired with another child who was in the opposite category to them. So anger-prone children were paired with children who were not anger-prone. They were then instructed to take part in a board game which was unfairly rigged, and both participants played 2 turns. The anger-prone child was given rewarding cues and punishment cues on the first and second turns respectively. After the game was finished, the child filled out a modified version of the self-assessment mannequin, which I'll refer to from now on as SAM, which is an established measurement used in children's reported self-reported feelings. The performance, so the accuracies and reaction times, known as RTs from now on, were analysed with reward cues, so gaining points, and compared with performance of the punishment cues, so losing points. Children's motivation was manipulated by the reward versus punishment cues linked to task performance. So the RTs were assessed using a mixed analysis of variance, ANO, VA, with congruency, so the either congruent, neutral, or incongruent cue, so reward or punishment, and ISI 100 or 450 MS, as within participant factors and with emotion group after unfair game, so they would report whether they were feeling anger, neutrality, or happiness. So the findings for this experiment were that indicated that high anger-prone children displayed a specific attentional bias towards reward stimuli in comparison with punishment stimuli. That fits in with the hypothesis. However, they did not differ in shifting their attention away from those stimuli. Additionally, after being treated unfairly in the board game and losing twice, 37.5% of children reported feeling angry, 35% reported feeling neutral, and 11% reported feeling happy. So it was difficult there to deduce whether there was a real strong emotion to being treated unfairly. This knowledge was available through using the SAM model as well as measuring the RTs when the children was either rewarded or punished. So the conclusions and implications of this study. The study concluded that children who are anger prone had a tendency to orient attention towards reward stimuli rather than punishment stimuli, and in this group of children, those with poor attention focusing also had a difficult moving away from those reward stimuli. The findings in this experiment show a new perspective on our understandings of the association between anger and also selective attention. The results also suggest that a child's reaction is also related to the way in which they are approached and dealt with. The limitations of this study are that because the children were the one to report how they felt using the SAM model, there's a chance that they may not necessarily have understood instructions and thus their emotions may not have been recorded properly. There also could have been a bias from parents and teachers in defining anger-prone children who might not, in fact, have been anger-prone. Here is just a list of references. Thank you very much.